The Revolution Podcast, episode 21, Ghosts.
Hi, you're listening to Revolution Podcast. This is Maria Howell as Grace on Revolution.
Golden Spiral Media presents The Revolution Podcast. Instantly watch unlimited TV episodes and movies over the internet right on your TV, computer, and various mobile devices. Watch as much as you want, as often as you want, for only $7.99 a month. Visit goldenspiralmedia.com/Netflix and start your free trial today. Welcome back to the Revolution Podcast, everybody.
I'm Jeremy.
Apparently you didn't get my pencil nod over to you to
Not
take
so
it
quickly.
first. I'm Daryl. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
What is this? Look at all the room at the top of my cup that
I
you left
saved
empty.
it for my cup.
You know, we talked last week about how we run out of coffee before the end of the podcast, and yet you leave. There's like a good 5 or 6 drinks there that you could have put in there that you didn't.
You're right.
I'm not putting you on charge of coffee duty ever again.
How about you bury me like Danny? And then
I might.
we can move on.
Well, if you were a hero, maybe, but you're not. You're not.
So you can bury me by, like...
I'm going to leave you to
some
the animals.
chum.
Leave you to the vultures.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's fine with me, though.
Is it?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm not there.
At least you'll be useful. You'll feed a bird.
Yeah. Unlike you.
What are you trying to say?
I don't know. What does it sound like?
Well, it sounds like I have no use to you whatsoever.
That could possibly be it.
Huh. Well, thanks for that.
You are a good co-host, though.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like that. Hey, guys, we're glad you've joined us for this week's episode of the Revolution Podcast. As I said in the intro tonight, we are talking about, what would this be, the 12th episode? 11th episode of...
12.
12, I think.
12.
Yeah, last week was 11. Of Revolution, called Ghosts. Jeremy, what do you think I was going to say, what do you think the title meant? I think we've got a feedback question about that.
Okay, so I won't answer the question.
Let's hold off on that.
Okay.
I'm 90% sure we have a feedback question on that, so I'm not going to let you answer that quite yet. This was written by David Rambo and Melissa Glenn. David was at WonderCon in Anaheim last weekend, and it was directed by Miguel Sapochnik. I have trouble saying his name, and Miguel, I'm terribly sorry. If you ever listen to me butcher your name, I'm sorry. Which he did some work on Fringe.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you got your Battlestar director last week.
Yeah.
I got the Fringe director this
I
week.
say director. It was written and edited by.
It was written
last week.
And you know what? You mentioned that you wanted season 3, episode 3.
Wrong episode. It was episode 4.
Oh, but she didn't do that one either.
Yeah.
Did she?
She was on it
Okay.
as the editor, I think.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I was looking only at writers, and I think she wrote episode 5,
Yeah.
but not.
Which was, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know. We watched it and I was like, dang it. I made an idiot of myself with my favorite show. I mentioned the wrong episode number.
Yeah.
So it was definitely episode 4.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
So-
okay. We all already knew that you were an idiot
Hey.
anyway.
That's why you listen to me.
That's right. Hey, you know what else we do? We have news and info. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of news or info this week. The ratings were down, the lowest they've ever been.
Okay.
Down enough where I'm kind of bummed about it. Down enough where I don't think that we're going to get a new season announcement this week.
Mhm.
You know, my prediction a couple weeks ago when we did the recap was if it comes back the first 2 weeks strong, then they'll get an announcement.
Right.
And if not, then they may wait a third week. I think it's going to be at least another week. It wasn't terrible. It was still strong enough to get renewed.
Mhm.
But since it's on a downward slide a little bit, I'm kind of wondering. So we'll see. I'm not concerned about the show really, but I do wish it was higher. It'd be a slam dunk if it had maintained what it was last week.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll definitely, tell your friends, get the ratings up a little bit because I'm disappointed. I feel like this show is better these last 2 episodes than we got in the first half.
Yeah.
And I don't know. People might have given up after the first half. People might have thought it got canceled, or I've seen people on the Facebook page and other places referring to this as season 2. It took so much time off that people aren't sure what's going on with the show. And I definitely think that's part of it. And we talked about that. There was a trade-off. You got constant episodes, no time off, versus being off and people forgetting about you. And we'll see.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, but hopefully they'll renew. I think they will. Let's go through these episode titles that we have here. Jeremy, you want to take the first one there?
All right. Well, as most of us have probably remembered from last week, April 8th's episode is called The Song Remains the Same, and that is episode 13 of season 1 of Revolution.
That's right. Episode 14, which airs on April 15th, is called The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia.
All right. And the 15th episode of the season is Home, airing on April 22nd.
And that's all that we know as far as episode titles. We do know that the season finale will be airing on May the 27th, which, again, as we mentioned last week, is Memorial Day. So we don't have any new information this week in regards to new titles or, well, it would be only titles because we do know it's going to go straight through. No breaks between now and the season finale. So we'll bring you episode titles as we're able to learn those. One thing we didn't mention last week, and I because I forgot to check, but I did check this week, and that's the footnotes. Jeremy, do you remember the footnotes?
Yes, I do, but I did not check them.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about them.
If you don't remember, the footnotes are the really cool thing that happens over at the NBC website, nbc.com/revolution/exclusives/footnotes, or just go over to nbc.com/revolution and just follow the exclusives link over there. And so it's been different things. It's been Wheatley's letters. It's been a newspaper article. It's been journal entries. It's been various things. We got a story back in the Children's Crusade. One of them wrote it about one of the characters. This week it was Aaron's journals.
Okay.
So he's writing in his journal how he feels like Rachel should be telling him what's going on. They're friends, and there's a relationship there, and she should be able to trust him. And he tells a story about back when they lived in the cul-de-sac, and they were all around one night and drinking and having a good time and throwing out theories on how the power went out. And he threw out a couple, and people were like, "Oh, that's cool. Never thought of that." And he's like, "I bet that she and Ben went home that night and thought I was an idiot and laughed so hard about the stupid ideas I had on how the power went out because they knew the whole time how the power went out."
So it's kind of like the producers listening to our podcast.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's pretty cool. Go over to nbc.com/revolution/exclusives/footnotes and check those out. There's one there from last week's episode as well. All right. Jeremy, do you have anything else to add for our news and info segment?
Nothing for the news.
All right. I do want to say that I hope you'll tune in next week. We'll have some really cool announcements to make next week for the show. So please tune in next week for that. You can always join us for the live show. We do it Tuesdays, every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern over at goldenspiralmedia.com/live. We've got the chat room and the video going. We'd love to have you join us as we do the live podcast. All right, let's do the episode recap. The episode begins with the burial of Danny and the other rebel fighters killed in last week's attack. Miles decides to help the resistance and leaves with Nora to go recruit some of the former militiamen who helped him try and kill Monroe, while the rest of the rebels regroup at a new base. In Philadelphia, Randall pings dependents and they briefly turn on. When they do, he is able to see their location. He tells Monroe that he has specifically chosen him over the other republics and that he is able to help Monroe conquer the entire continent. Miles and Nora find their way to a small town to recruit a man named Jim. Jim is now living under a fake name and works as a librarian. He's now married and settled down and does not want to get involved with Miles. However, a man informs the nearby militia of Miles' whereabouts, and they send out a squadron of fighters to find and kill Miles, Nora, and Jim. Back at the rebel base, the pendants suddenly come on, and Rachel notices. She realizes that they aren't supposed to do that, and Randall is tracking them. They move quickly to move all the rebels to a safe location, and Rachel stays behind to destroy the pendants. However, she doesn't get out of the base in time, and she, Charlie, and Aaron are trapped inside when the militia arrives. They manage to kill several militia soldiers, but Randall escapes back to Philadelphia. In flashback, we learn that 1 year before the blackout, Randall and his wife lost their son while he was serving in Afghanistan. He used that as motivation to take control of the power and wipe the earth clean. He thinks that by burning up the earth, something better and safer will emerge from it. Back in real time, Miles, Nora, and Jim take on the militia fighters and kill them all. Jim's wife learns who he really is and leaves him. Having nothing left, Jim joins Miles' effort to fight for the rebels and kill Monroe. They all converge back at the new camp, and Rachel and Charlie finally share a moment of grief over the death of Danny. Aaron tells Rachel that she should tell them what's going on, and she agrees. She starts by saying, "There's this place. It's called the Tower." Alrighty, that is the episode recap, which means it's time for episode discussion. All right, so some good things to talk about this week, I think. This was, for me, this episode was good, not great.
Okay.
I ended up giving it 7 acid baths.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Do you have a rating for it?
Well, I gave it 7 snow planets, but
Like Hoth?
like Hoth.
Like the Echo Base?
Yeah.
That's nice. I like that.
I was a little disappointed that there wasn't much snow in the episode, though.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, we were referring to each other as different. Like we had Rogue Leader, we had Porkins. We had different guys in the chat room on Monday while we were watching the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a little fun with that as well. So for me, it was a good episode. It was action-packed. We did get some answers. We got some development and things like that. I didn't like it as much as last week, and there were definitely some hang-ups I had with some of the conveniences of the episode, And it's interesting because we all have these things that we, in our, for us, I'm like, oh, that's too far, that's too far-fetched, or they crossed the line, or that's too unrealistic, maybe, that would kind of catch everything across the board. For example, I got a tweet from, you're going to cover that? Yeah, I got a tweet this last week, and it was from Aaron, I believe, and he was asking me, if the episodes, now that the Revolution was back, were they still jerking us around? And I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, with things that are so far-fetched, like the fuel. I mean, it's not possible that the fuel will be good after that many years, and that really, really, really bugs him. Mm-hmm. Well, that's still the case. I mean, as of last week, they were flying helicopters. This week, they're driving Humvees.
Yeah.
Fuel does begin to separate and degrade after just a few months' use. Even if you put some stabilizers in there, it's still going to start to break down after even a year, And so to think of 15 years later that the fuel would still be usable without causing any engine damage or anything like that is really far-fetched. But that doesn't really bother me. It really bugs him,
Right.
But there were things that bug me that might not bug him. That's the whole point of me starting this thing out here. It's been just really interesting. What some people will say is, they can suspend their disbelief on and others can't. You know what I mean? We each kind of have our own things. And so for me, this episode had some things where I was like, come on. Where last week didn't, but for other people, last week did. So that's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was one particular scene that I'll complain about later.
Okay.
You might be thinking of it already. Who knows?
Well, let's kind of step our way through the episode here a little bit. And I mean, it starts out, you teased me in the intro about, burying me or burying you, I guess, like Danny. That's kind of how we start out. Danny and the other people that were killed in the attack at Annapolis last week. We start out with their burial, and kind of a hard scene to watch, as we know, who's in there, who's in that being wrapped up there. We have Rachel trying to grab Charlie's hand, and she pulls it away. Mm-hmm. So it was a tough scene for sure. And then I think this episode kind of followed the fallout of Danny's death,
right?
And I think that's kind of the new dynamic. What are the consequences? What are the responses of the people of Danny's death? We had, Charlie, she bottles up her anger and lashes out at people.
Mm-hmm.
We have Rachel blaming herself and really breaking down a couple of times. We have Miles now being willing to join the rebels, which you think about, last fall.
Yeah.
He was completely against doing that. So those are some of my observations. Do you want to kind of expound on those and add your own thoughts? You have some other ideas there?
Yeah. As far as Miles goes, I don't know if he's the word willing to join the rebels. The way I picked it up on him was he was very begrudging about that whole situation. He didn't want to help them at all. They're the stupid rebels, things like that.
That's true.
He made a couple comments. I thought that was kind of interesting. You see his reluctance there.
Yeah.
Charlie, I may have celebrated too soon, actually, in the first half of the season when I talked about how she would enter this dark period. I thought Maggie was the person who died, who would lead her into this dark period, and she would come out stronger and tougher, but still hopeful at the end. It may actually be Danny, so I may have jumped the gun on.
Well, I don't think you jumped the gun completely. I think that the death of Maggie definitely propelled her into a toughness, but it didn't necessarily propel her into a darkness.
Right.
Where this looks like it could. I mean, she did have the moment with her mom there at the end of the episode. We'll see. That may smooth it out a little bit.
Right. So I don't know if they're just going to go with an episode or if they're going to drag that out a bit longer. But yeah, when she blew her mom off there at the beginning, it was kind of like, ooh.
Right.
So there's Charlie being angry. So
yeah, and I liked that. I liked that different characters dealt with it in different ways. I liked Rachel really just panicking, really, because she's realizing the monumental mistakes that she's made, particularly in regard to her children. And now she has no chance, obviously, to remedy any of that with her son.
Right.
And when she's hyperventilating or whatever she was doing there in the kitchen, at that point, that was after she had slapped Charlie. And so that relationship at that point was in terrible shape. And we still really don't know how repaired it is, even though they had that moment at the end of the episode.
Right.
But she's feeling the weight and the consequences of what she's done to her children, probably hitting her for the first time because she's been separated from them. It's easy to think that they're happy and, imagine they're happy without you. But now she's realizing, oh, there's damage to what she's done, So I liked that.
Yeah, I agree. I like that she's torn up about the whole situation. Hopefully this is not just because of Danny, but because of what you kind of alluded to it, what happened those years that she was without them. So maybe she's starting to regret some of those mistakes.
Right.
Straight from pretty much the burial and that funeral kind of thing, we were introduced to what I already mentioned as Echo Base.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. We find a Star Wars reference every week, but I don't know.
It's not hard to. And they've talked about how this was... I mean, we got the Return of the Jedi mailbox in the pilot. I mean, obviously this show is inspired by Star Wars, so it's going to be easy to do.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of a cool little throw in there. So,
but, also I think, let's say the world ends today. There's some sort of apocalypse, okay? And for whatever reason... guys like you and me survive.
Right.
And for whatever reason, well, you're more apt with a gun than I am. I've shot a gun and stuff, but let's say that we wind up leading a band of rebels.
Band of brothers.
Band of brothers. There you go.
We can do a whole episode on puns.
So. And we had a base. Would we not call it Echo Base?
It would probably be Echo Base in a snowy valley called Serenity. On an island called Hoth, something like that.
Absolutely, that's what we would do. We would have, I would be scruffy-looking nerve herder.
Yeah, I'd be some hairy, dog-looking creature.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we would do. If we were really running the world in a post-apocalyptic era, that's what we would call things.
Yeah.
It would give us some little sliver of joy in those dark moments. So that's cool. That's cool.
Yep.
Geeks would rule the world. That's right, Alternicat. All right, what else?
I don't know. I'll let you take the next part.
Well, I was just going to make the observation, because we talked about it last week, that Charlie didn't have her bow. Well, she clearly has it back now, so that was cool. I mean, I just made the note just because we had talked about it. Mm-hmm. And she has a gun now. What did you think about her use of the gun?
At the end of the episode?
At any point in the episode.
She does not aim through the sight. She kind of aims over it, but I guess that's so we can see her pretty eyes. So
I think that's it.
She has rather pretty eyes. They're blue, aren't they?
They are. You know, I noticed bad gun technique. You know, at one point, I think she had the stock up against her left shoulder while she's shooting with her right hand, and I'm just like,
okay,
you know. But it's only. I'm pretty sure it's only because if she were to put the stock against her right shoulder from the camera angle, the gun would be covering her face. So let's move it to the left shoulder so that the camera shot looks better. But she looked ridiculous trying to shoot the gun that way.
I was like, is she left-handed? And then I realized the way she was holding it. I think it's kind of neat. I don't know if this is anything that the directors have given us, but I'm going to pretend that it is. She doesn't know how to shoot a rifle.
I agree with that.
So she knows how to shoot a crossbow. Granted, she always uses the crossbow in the correct hand. So
Charlie handles a gun like a stormtrooper.
I don't know. They're pretty elite compared to her. But when she was shooting at everybody but Randall,
she was
shooting at Randall.
That was one of my things, right? That was one of my lines that got crossed.
Yeah. So, she doesn't have the best skills, but I can let it go. We've not seen her get training or anything from Miles as far as shooting a rifle goes. So I'll let her ineptitude, if that's even a word, I'll let that slide.
See, that's funny. I mean, that's like I said, there's these lines, right? I don't want to bring it up all night long, but I think it's worth noting because the show's getting trashed by people, and any show's going to get trashed by a certain amount of audience, right? And it's losing some audience, right? The ratings are down, so there's probably more of that now. But I just think it's important to point out that each of us have different things that bug us and some things that don't, and that's all. That's all I'll say.
Improper handling of firearms does bug me.
Yeah.
But this is Hollywood. I can't expect a whole lot of knowledge coming from them when it has anything to do with firearms.
Okay. So they had 2 pendants that they also destroyed. It was cool to see them turned back into flash drives.
Yeah. I was happy to see that.
All right. What do you got there? You just made a sign for your coffee. You're out of coffee already.
I am out of coffee already.
Yeah. I wish I had more coffee in my cup. I'm almost out. So that was terrible. I thought it would be funnier, but it was terrible. I have to move on myself. 2 pendants is where I was going.
Right. We had 2 pendants.
Where did they get the 2 pendants?
I'm assuming that one of them was when they left the base, and the other is from the helicopter. Maybe they were built to survive an explosion of that proportion.
Well, we saw Miles tried to destroy it earlier in the season, and that didn't happen. So I fully believe it survived the explosion of the helicopter. I think that's where they got one, and the other one is from John that they got last week.
Did they take one from John? I didn't even consider
that's how they came back and were able to use the rocket launcher.
I just thought they weren't.
No, they tied it around the bazooka thing, and so that I think that's so we're in agreement that the second one came from the downed helicopter.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Because if they're smart, which they are, the first thing you would do is go through that wreckage and find that pendant before anyone else is able to get their hands on it. So so that's how they got 2, but they destroyed them. So any theories or thoughts that we had that all 12 pendants needed to be unified in some sort of Voltron type of super thing, that's out the window now.
Yeah. So no powers combined and Captain Planet, none of that's happening
happening, right. Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, I have no issue with that. It just, that was a theory that had been thrown out there, and now we know that theory cannot possibly be true. Right?
Perhaps maybe they have to create 2 more from where they're at now. Who knows?
Perhaps they do.
Or we still have one ring to rule them all. There's somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well, there's a tower that's involved here.
Yeah, maybe it's the one ring. It is a circle, right?
Yeah. I don't know if Sauron is holed up there at the tower or not.
We will find out.
We will find out.
If there's a glowy light at the top.
Yeah. or more suitable for this show would be the Dark Tower that we've seen from Stephen King.
Right.
Which I guess I have it later in the notes, but since we've brought up Stephen King, a couple of things I'll mention here is that we've seen Stephen King used a lot in this show, which I think is also great. Last week's episode was called The Stand, which is also another name of one of his books. We saw The Stand in this episode. Did you catch that?
In the library.
In the library. He gave it to a kid and said, it's about the end of the world.
Right.
But there was also a sign that said Stephen King and a section of nothing but Stephen King books.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was really big, couple of really big Stephen King shout-outs. Now, the librarian, his fake name was Henry Bemis.
Right.
Are you familiar with Henry Bemis?
I'm going to have to play the stupid card. Nope, I'm not.
Well, I'm a huge, huge Twilight Zone fan. And one of the most iconic Twilight Zone episodes ever is, it's actually played by Burgess Meredith. You know who he is?
Loosely.
He played the Penguin in the old Batman series. Okay. He played Mickey on the Rocky movies.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly.
So he plays this character named Henry Bemis, and all he does is read. He loves to read, but his wife won't let him read, and his boss won't let him read. And so he works at this bank, and he takes his lunch break and goes down to the vault because it's quiet down there, and he reads. He'll read anything that he can get his hands on. And a nuclear bomb goes off, and because he's in the vault, he's the only one that survives. And he comes out and he realizes he now has no one that can prevent him from reading. So he goes to the library and he stacks up all the books, and he's got all of them in different stacks and what he wants to read, and he's so excited that now he has all the time in the world. The name of the episode is Time Enough to Last. And he stumbles a little bit, and his glasses fall off his face, and his lenses break, and he can't see now to read.
I think I've seen that scene.
Yeah.
So that it's in my head.
So there's a guy who loved to read. Now we have a librarian taking on that name. I don't know if he took it on, like
if
we were to flesh out the
nerds.
character, like did Jim take that name because he liked that episode, or was it just something the writers did? But either way, it's a great homage to a wonderful series and a wonderful episode of the Twilight Zone.
Right. So, well, we kind of went from the pendants back to the books. Did we want to mention the controlling of the pendants?
The fact that Randall can ping them?
Right.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by that. I was like, oh, wow. So it was kind of tingly feeling while I was watching the episode. I was like, it's great. So we finally know how the iPhone was turned on.
That's right. And the lighthouse.
Right. So it's kind of neat to know that he's been controlling it the whole time. I was a little confused as to how Rachel was unaware that he could do that.
Well, he said that Grace taught him that trick, so I was wondering if Grace taught him that trick after he came and captured her.
I was assuming that's how he found her.
You might be right. And she could have taught it to him, but I see your point now. If she would have taught that to him while the team was together, you think Rachel would have known about it.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Your theory is plausible, though. Now that I kind of think about it, I think, well, maybe he watched for intervals and he saw them on his little radar device. So maybe he picked it up that way. But
boy, it's really going to make it hard, though, if they repossess that is to possess again, not to take back from, a pendant. Man, he's going to be able to track him down because he can ping him. So that really puts them in a disadvantage, which could be why, Rachel just says, we need to get to the tower.
Right.
The tower is the answer to it all.
And if they get there before he does, maybe he can't track them anymore.
Maybe. Or they can get control of the equipment that is being used to track him. Maybe they can get the power back on and try to end what he's doing.
Right.
I don't know. But it definitely puts them in a tough spot if owning a pendant would give them the power they need to have a fighting chance and yet make them vulnerable to their location to an enemy attack. That's a really, really tough spot to be in.
especially when the enemy's coming with fueled up Hummers.
and Huey helicopters.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's really cool. I don't know. We'll see how that fleshes out, but that's definitely a big time revelation. That's what I mean. We got some answers. We got some allusions to answers.
Right.
We got some straight out answers like that one, and then it looks like more answers are coming.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Definitely.
I don't think Rachel's done with her story of, well, it all starts with this place called the Tower. I don't think that's the end of that story. No,
that's just the beginning of it.
And or the end of what we'll see of it either. I think there will be answers that we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be all of a sudden Aaron knows, but we didn't get to see the rest of that conversation. Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
When we were watching it, I finished her sentence for you, or for her. I was like, next week. So... But no, so I think we'll find out definitely more about that. One thing that I did catch with Randall talking to Monroe when he's talking about how they can build more amps, and he says, I can give you everything. He chose him. He wanted the Monroe militia instead of Georgia, instead of California. I thought that was interesting. But he made a comment about how, lighten up. I just thought that was kind of funny because... I don't know. It kind of had a pun hidden somewhere in there. Maybe I'm stretching there. But
maybe you are. I didn't pick up on that, but that's still cool. But we got some other answers there, right?
Yeah.
Is it Ben or Casey that's in charge of California? Affleck.
Oh. Casey. I don't know.
I got to go. Here's the thing. He said it was, Colonel Affleck or whatever the rank was in charge of California. If they're ever going to reveal that character on screen, it's got to be neither.
Right.
Unless they're going to get the actor to play himself in that role. You know what I mean? So I don't know. And they could. I mean, it could be neither. Of course, those aren't the only two Afflecks in the world. But it was definitely something that the chat room on Monday night as we were watching the show together, they were chiming in. And a lot of people, started talking about the Affleck duck because it sounds so similar.
Right.
So they have a duck in charge of California, which might be better than what they have now. I'm not sure.
Sorry, California. No,
I'm just kidding, California.
I didn't even pick up on the general's name, to be honest. So
yeah, definitely. It was definitely Affleck.
Okay.
Cool. And we're going to get down to Georgia in, 2 weeks, it sounds like.
At least.
I mean, the night the lights went down in Georgia or out in Georgia. So, I don't know that we're going to make the way around the whole country to all the different republics, but we're at least going to make it to Georgia.
Yeah.
All right. I mentioned some of the answers we got and stuff. I guess I'm skipping down a little bit too far here, but we can go back up. We got answers somewhat to why Randall's doing what he's doing and kind of what he did, right? I mean, we know that his son was killed in Afghanistan.
Right.
He wanted to stop humanity's insatiable desire for bloodshed and decided to burn the earth, really is what he said. And out of it would spring something better and stronger.
Right.
It just seems awfully short-sighted to me. He's either crazy, which I think he is, or oblivious, which I don't think he is. That in doing so, he caused more bloodshed than there ever was before.
Right. He's not oblivious to it.
No, he can't be.
He can't be. He's the one who's wanting to rule through Monroe. He's wanting to take over the world. To me, it's much more about him obtaining the capability to at the very least, be powerful himself. He's become very selfish in this moment. I missed maybe some of what happened immediately after we find out his son died because I was too busy writing down something along the lines of, dang, time travel might fit really well with this.
There it is again.
It's going to be here until it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's fine.
But no, I think that he's way too evil. He's way too manipulative to be somebody who just wanted to fix the world. Because if that was the case, he would have gone crawled up and holed up somewhere.
Yeah, unless you're crazy, though. And I think, we talked at the top of the show about how each of these three main characters, Miles, Rachel, and Charlie, all responded differently to the death of Danny.
Right.
And here's a guy who responded differently to the death of his son. And, that would definitely be enough to make somebody go off the deep end in some certain circumstances.
Sure.
But what is also...
His was a little bit deeper than the deep end, though.
Right, and this is really where one of those lines was crossed for me.
Right.
This guy's in a high-ranking position in the U.S. government.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna be in charge of this military operation that's being done from a control room. It reminded me of some of the scenes we saw after the attack on bin Laden, how they all gathered in the war room and were making decisions via video conferencing and stuff. And where was the president? Where was the Secretary of Defense? Where were these higher-ranking officials? Why was this one guy given the call to do this?
Right.
I know there were other people in the room, but he seemed to be the only one who really knew what was going on. It just seemed too far-fetched to me.
Well, I think, maybe suspend a little disbelief. I don't completely understand the inner workings of the government, but I don't think the president is sitting in on every one of those.
I don't either.
So, and if it comes down to your assistant director of the Department of Defense, I think he's high-ranking enough to be the one in charge for it.
And you might be right. Jim in Wisconsin says that didn't he say he had the backing of the Joint Chiefs? Yes, he did say that. And, I guess hindsight is 20/20. I mean, maybe it was a smaller operation like you said, and he had the backing from the level he needed from above. Okay, I can go for that too. But it's just still, like I said, maybe it's because hindsight here.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that something that he didn't expect happened? Because that was the night.
No, he expected it to happen.
Okay, I agree. Everyone else was deceived.
Right.
He knew what was actually going to happen.
Yeah. At first, actually, in my notes, I have, is this an accident?
Yeah.
But then I see him clutching his son's dog tags.
Yeah.
Which says, no, it's not an accident. This is all premeditated. And again, I wrote in my notes, he wants to fix it. So essentially, he wants to go back in time.
You know what, Jeremy? That is the strongest argument you've made yet for time travel.
I thought it was the same argument I've made.
No, because you said people would want to go back and fix their mistakes.
Right.
But you've got a crazy lunatic with power, literally and figuratively, who wants his son back. Right. That's a stronger argument in my mind for time travel. Mm-hmm. But I'm still not on that now, bus with you. But it's a good argument.
What I will say, that being said, he may never obtain it. It may be a goal of his. It may be something he desires. But as much as I think we will see it, we might not, because they might prevent him from obtaining that. They might, the good guys essentially might prevent that all from happening.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've got mixed emotions here. Jim in Wisconsin likes it. Alternacat says she sees sharks if that happens. And
we'll motorcycles being
that's right.
Jumped over them.
Fonzie's putting on the leather jacket. I don't know. I don't foresee that happening, right away, and I don't think you do either. So we'll see how that plays out. Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything more to say on that what we got about Randall this week?
Other than I loved finding out more about Randall.
Yeah.
That's about all I might have for now on him.
Yeah, I loved it too, and I think his character became much more intriguing. He was already an intriguing character.
Yeah.
And I really like what they did with him. And I like that Monroe said, I don't trust him. I don't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody should trust anybody at this point.
Well, you bring that up, and I was going to bring that up more in regards of Tom rather than Randall.
Okay.
Tom asks him, do you trust him? He says, no. I don't trust anyone. And Tom kind of looks at him, and you know that Tom is going, crap, because he's not obtained the trust he thought he might have obtained.
But if you're Monroe, you don't trust anyone. You shouldn't trust anyone, because maybe the last time you trusted someone, a.k.a. Miles, he tried to kill you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, speaking of trying to kill, and that kind of reminds me just what you said with Jim Hudson.
Uh-huh.
Can we go on to Jim now? Or?
We can talk about Jim and his middle name, which I'm assuming is Tiberius.
All right.
Why not?
Was he captain?
You can't prove me wrong.
Okay. Well, stick with it until it's proven wrong.
That's right. Now, if he is a captain, then it's done.
Definitely,
it's done, right?
So, no, when they introduced him, at the very beginning of the episode, he's like, Miles is like, I've got to go find Jim Hudson. And Nora's like, he'll try to kill you.
Right.
And I was very Patience at Whitefall, Firefly reference, anyone? So I just kind of got the feedback from each of the characters. To me, felt very much like the pilot for Firefly, just when they kind of jab Mal for Patience trying to kill him. So
yeah, no, I like that.
So, anywho, that's just my little Firefly reference there.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the dynamic between Rachel and her daughter, Charlie. By the way, we're going to talk about Charlie as a character and if she's still annoying, is she great? What are your thoughts on her? That's going to be our Twitter poll question that'll happen in our feedback podcast, which is going to be a separate podcast this week. I should have made it separate last week. Last week was too long. But so if you're wanting opinions on that, we're going to provide that. But we had that altercation between the two ladies with Rachel slapping Charlie.
Right.
What's your take on that scene?
Charlie should have decked her. That was my first thought.
That was my first thought.
So maybe that's more of a masculine thought. Violence begets violence.
I don't know, maybe. It just seems so unnecessary and unwarranted.
Yeah. So I was a little upset. It kind of reminds me of Family Feud today. They asked 100 women question about what they would do to their
Family
husbands.
Feud? You watched Family Feud?
It was on like right before I left, and we just watched this one survey. And anywho, a man is up there and he answers the question, and he's like, "She'll slap him."
What was the question?
If a wife caught her husband looking at another woman, what would she do? And they had pulled 100 wives.
All right.
And the man's initial reaction was mine. Hit him.
Yeah.
And I thought about that, and this kind of makes me think, and that was the number 2 answer. The number 1 answer was the woman's answer, ignore it, which I thought was interesting. So, and which is pretty much what Charlie did here. So it's interesting just to see the dynamic of what one demographic would do. So
I mean, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. Charlie was being extremely disrespectful to her mom.
Oh, her mom deserved every bit of that.
Yeah, that's as far as I can go. Because her mom hasn't been a part of her life. Her mom made some decisions that she has not answered up to. Yeah. Give your daughter an explanation as to why you abandoned her and her brother, who is now dead. Instead of just saying, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Now's not the time.
Yeah.
You know? I'm sorry if it's painful for you to talk about, but she deserves an answer. She's your daughter.
Yeah.
She just found out you've been alive all this time. She deserves an explanation. Yeah. And if she's going to talk to you and tell you straight up to your face that you haven't been there for her, you have no right to slap her.
Right.
You know, so I was really upset with Rachel for behaving that way. Mm-hmm. But really, you know, my first reaction was yours. Yeah. Hit her back, punch her, go slap her, put the fist together.
I wanted to just ball her fist and just KO her, but so I understand it coming from Rachel. From Rachel, I think that she's definitely crazy. She's losing it.
Charlie.
No, Rachel.
Rachel.
So, and I think it kind of shows that she's become a little unhinged. My wife just finished an interesting episode.
Don't talk Battlestar with your wife via text message during our podcast.
Well, it's
you two geek out on your own time.
For the Battlestar fans, it's one of the big death scenes in the series.
Okay.
And she just sent me awful. All right, so back to Revolution.
So it was a pivotal scene because it set up what happened later in the episode. I think, like I said, Charlie was dealing with her brother's death by bottling everything up and lashing out. We saw her go on the rage. She needed to take that anger and put it towards somebody.
Yeah.
And she still had some anger left inside. Of course, she took some of it out on her mother. I got that backwards. Her mom hit her. But she's keeping it all inside. And so we got it at the end of the episode where, they apologized.
Right.
They wept. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to be enough or not to smooth out the relationship. It shouldn't smooth it out all the way.
Right.
But hopefully at least it gets them onto talking terms, which will be what they need to do to heal that relationship.
Yeah. I think it'll start them on the track for it. So, and Charlie is able to get out some of her anger on the poor militia that she's obviously destroying. So with her Legolas moves now.
Well, yeah. And she had the great shot, too, in the crossbow. I don't know if it jammed or she couldn't get it loaded, what the deal was. And the guy came around the corner and she jabbed him in the heart.
The Legolas thing.
Okay.
He kind of stabs a guy and then fires an arrow.
Okay. I guess I don't remember that exact
She didn't fire an arrow.
Scene, but
it's at the end of the Fellowship. Sorry.
Okay.
Nerd moment.
No, I'm surprised I don't remember that off the top of my head.
I say end of Fellowship. It may be the beginning of Two Towers. It's when a certain somebody is becoming a pincushion. So
I think that's in Fellowship.
But yeah, it's either at the end of Fellowship or they filmed it for the beginning of the Two Towers. It's in that scene, but I don't remember when they filmed it.
Well, I'm sure one of our nerds in the chat room will clear us up on that.
So
okay, so the next thing on my list is the over-the-top things, which I already talked a little bit about. Do you want to get into anything else before I cover that?
No, I think we're good.
All right. I did just a couple of things. Overall, like I said, I liked the episode. Lots of action, some good answers, and some good setups. And good character development. Those are all things I look for in an episode.
Yeah.
But there were just some groaner moments for me, which really did cause me to rate it down. I rated it a 7, which for me is pretty low. The first thing, Miles and Nora, and yes, Jim was there as well. They kill 20 or 30 minutes, a minimum of 20. I paused it on my second watch through the episode
and counted
them. And the most I could ever count on one screen at one time was 20.
Yeah.
Let's say it is 20. And there are 3 of them. That's 7 people apiece, on average. Is that realistic? Some of them had guns.
They killed, from the way I felt it went down, they killed the guys with guns at the top of the fight. Those are the first targets for them. They kind of made them a priority. So is it plausible? Yeah, Miles obviously taught everyone how to do the sword play. Right now I'm going to pretend Jim taught Miles.
Okay.
Because he was that good. Miles has his dual wielding at the end. He's got, I can't remember how he's holding, what the actual term is, but he has one kind of in his offhand is down and one is more of a regular handhold. So, kind of a real cool, great for a TV flick kind of a move. But I don't know, possible. We've seen them survive worse. So,
and that's the thing, right? You go back to the pilot and what Miles did in the...
He took out 15 people there by himself.
So they have set precedents so that Miles is capable of defeating about 15 guys on his own.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves 5 guys between, Nora and Jim.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely a good... I'll take those odds with those 2 fighters. But this is also a kill squad.
Right.
You would think those are the best fighters, not just guys who just signed up the day before.
Right. Well,
so
he's Luke Skywalker. They're stormtroopers.
That's right. I know, and I know that's the way TV is, but it did bug me. That's all the point of this is.
Yeah.
Another thing in that same scene, I never did catch the guy's name. The guy that was in charge of the kill squad.
Yeah.
Did you get his name?
Thought I did, but it's not on the pages.
Punches through the door.
Yeah.
That was a little unnecessary. Kick it down, or I don't know, punching through the wooden door. What do you like?
Wooden hand, maybe.
Jason Voorhees or something? I don't know.
Well, we are breaking into a room with Stephen King books. So.
Well, that's true. I don't know. It bugged me.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot on that. Just I thought there's a better way. And then the last thing was when everybody gets shot except Randall. And I know the bad guy has to escape because you don't want to kill him in the first chapter of your book.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like they could have done it in a different way that was more realistic. When she's shooting that gun, it seems to be taking everybody down, and then suddenly she can't get an aim above, a foot in front of his feet. Yeah. It just didn't seem realistic. Make it so that the gun jams. Make it so that he gets into the Humvee and it's got armor plating, or somebody, because then after she did that, then somebody fired and they had to retreat. So make there's other ways to do it so that suddenly when it gets to the one guy you need to kill most, her aim all of a sudden goes terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what bugged me.
Yeah, well, I just assumed her aim was terrible from the get-go, and she hit everybody around him but him.
Just by luck?
Yeah. Wrong place, wrong time, guys.
Well, then suddenly it becomes a lot more believable.
She just can't hit what she's aiming at. So one thing I will say here, though, is I think, at least kind of I feel like you gave me a hard time for keeping a tally on how many times Tom made it away from a fight in the first half of the season.
I did.
So
I did.
Welcome to the Why Can't You Hit It Club.
Oh, good. Does membership have its privileges?
We get to complain and bicker.
All right.
And some people listen to us for it.
You just called me out. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Good for you.
So I don't know. It definitely bugs me. You know, everybody knows if you can't hit what you're aiming at, it definitely bothers me. But like I said earlier, she doesn't know how to use a rifle. If it was Miles shooting at him, like it was Miles shooting at Tom at one point in the woods and couldn't hit him, kind of the same thing. But it's her. She sucks. So I'm just going to say it. She's not a good shot.
Okay.
With a rifle. With a bow, hallway, bam, she nails the guy who's coming out, and like a snapshot. It was a great shot that she had with the crossbow, but
it was.
She can't do anything with a rifle.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well,
sad.
Jim says maybe she was aiming at the ground. Maybe, but yeah. And someone else mentioned maybe if he'd got shot in the leg or something. Hey, that would have been cool too. Yeah, Mark says that. I would have been okay with that. Wound the guy, fine. He retreats and now you get him in the leg. Okay, cool.
I would like to be the first to welcome you to this prestigious club.
Well,
so get used to it.
I'm not only the president, I'm a member or whatever the hair club for men is. All right. What else do you have to talk about?
Let's see.
Do you know how much I love that I go through the trouble of making this Google Doc that we can kind of be on the same page, literally, and you handwrite your notes so that only you have any idea what's left on the show.
Well, my laptop's dead at the moment, so
it's called eBay. They make. This isn't newsflash, Jeremy. You can get a power adapter other than the one that came with your laptop.
I'm too cheap. I know the moment I buy another adapter,
you'll find the one.
Find it. So, no, a couple of scenes we were talking about her shooting. She has the one crossbow versus 3 men. She's got the crossbow pointed at the door, and nobody opens the door to look in there. They just kind of look through the frosted glass.
Yeah,
in a dark room.
Look through frosted glass.
So
that was dumb too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My major letdown of this entire episode, since we're talking about letdowns, was the wife. I can't even remember her name, but I put caps lock in my handwriting. I was just stupid. To me, it felt like cop-out writing. They have this woman. They should have killed her.
Yeah.
They should have killed her.
That would have given him the motivation to need to go kill Monroe.
Right. But what they did is they melodrama it up.
Yeah.
I can't love you because you lied to me about your name. Nobody cares about your name.
Not only that, she looked at him like he was some sort of evil criminal for defending her and killing the guy who was about to kill her.
He saved her life.
Yeah.
And she hates him for it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, okay, you can be mad. Fine, be mad. But then he's willing to leave her. And so essentially they're doing that whole divorce thing, kind of like Aaron did with his wife.
Yeah.
And you're leaving the one that you're leaving your spouse who you've pledged to be with for the rest of your life because she didn't like that you killed somebody, and apparently she's letting you go. And it just, to me, it was, man, you just kill her. Yeah, we all saw it coming, but
at least it's a more believable break at that point and a motivator. I agree. I mean, to think that these two people couldn't have talked it out and worked it out, is a little hard to believe. I'm with you on that too.
It's like every cheesy plot to a chick flick where we all know that they have to have an argument at some point during the climax of the chick flick so they can get upset, so they can get happy again and marry each other at the end. Because they don't tell each other the truth, which would have prevented the entire movie from happening, then it's just cheap.
You just described about 5 seasons of Lost.
I just described
if they
about
would have
90%
just talked
of
to
TV.
each other, the whole thing could have been solved in 1 season.
Yes. I just need you to talk.
Yeah. No,
So
that's true.
so I was a little disappointed that they couldn't work through that. I can understand her being upset, but
Yeah.
not that Jim would give up so easily on his wife. So that was kind of my drawback, and kind of like you, it was because of that single scene that I went from a 9 or so to a 7.
Yeah.
So I pulled it back because it was very disappointing. And it was kind of towards the end of the show,
Yeah.
the end of the episode, and it was more of a last impression.
Yeah, and I feel like we're being pretty hard on the episode. Look, I'll say it again. I thought the episode had a lot of action.
Mhm.
It had good character development.
Yeah.
And it gave us some answers, and it looks like more answers are coming. Those are all things that I look for in a show, and I enjoyed this show very, very much. But I do feel like there's just some things here that are preventing it from being a show that is, I mean, it's losing audience a little bit, and I think that's part of the reason why they're doing these things, that you could just tweak just a little bit, and the audience wouldn't go, "Oh, come on," so much. We're willing to go, "Oh, come on," a little bit, but not quite so much.
It was still a good episode, and if it weren't for that scene for me, I would have given it a much better rating because it had the character development. It had Randall. Oh man, that was great.
Yeah.
So it had the things I normally look for, and maybe I'm being a little unfair to it because of that scene, but I don't know. One thing that I did see with the character development was Miles. When Charlie and Rachel are making up at the end, he's kind of looking at them, and it kind of felt to me that he's longing for something. There's something in his head that he desires that we're not seeing yet. And whether or not that's his relationship with Rachel to be restored.
Yeah, we've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
In the feedback.
Okay.
Got 2 callers with the same theory or observation or whatever you want to call it that I missed. I didn't see that, but after they mentioned it, I'm like, oh man.
All right. Well, I will not develop that, and we can move on to
it'll be fun. It'll be fun. That'll be coming up in our feedback podcast.
All
right. Anything else, Jeremy?
Nope.
All right. Let's do quote of the week. All right, so we put the poll up on the website and allowed people to go over there and vote for what their favorite quote for last week's episode, The Stand, was. And the winner, this was close. This only won by 1 vote, and then there were 2 that tied below it, so it was a really close vote this week. No real strong winner. But the winner was Not This Time.
We can't do this. Excuse me. There are too many people in there. Is it really about the people? And not just one person in particular? That pert little bitch has got you soft as a kitten. Need I remind you, we are at war with these rebels. With those choppers, we're not fighting. We're butchering. I didn't sign on for this. You don't get to choose what you sign on for. You follow orders. Not this time.
All right, so that's the last week's winner. We have 4 new quotes for you to vote on this week. The poll is up on our website, goldenspiralmedia.com. Go over to click on the Revolution podcast, and then it's in the polls tab. You'll see all the tabs we have for our show. Polls is one of those options, and you can it'll be right there. You'll see the quotes of the week. It'll be up on the website Wednesday, which will be April 3rd, and it'll be up through Monday, through the end of Monday, so you can go over there anytime and vote for what your favorite quote is for this episode, which was called Ghosts. All right, so the first quote is, "Believe me, I know."
Nora and I, we can help, okay? Let's fight him off together.
I am not fighting, okay? I have a wife and people that I care about.
Guys like us can't have that. If you care about somebody, you're just gonna let him down. Or worse, get him killed. Believe me. I know.
All All right. Quote number 2. God bless America.
Business as usual. For you, that's losing. I mean, a few random bombings here and there. You think that's going to do anything? You are a fly. Buzzing around Monroe's head, and that's all.
Miles.
You want to take down Monroe, you got to hit hard. Make sure he doesn't get back up again. You got to decimate his men. Burn Philly to the ground. And how are we going to do all that? Well, for one thing, I'm going to help you.
You are gonna help us.
Look at me. I'm with the rebels now. God bless America.
All right. We talked earlier how Jim must be a Twilight Zone fan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was clear in this episode that Miles is a Weird Al fan. And he came through with the Conan the Librarian quote.
You still think Monroe's dangerous, right?
I'll be the first to admit I'm not a fan of Monroe. But I can't do this.
Sure you can.
No, I cannot be that guy again. I'm building something here. Hey, something good.
So, you're just what now? Conan the Librarian?
All right. And the final quote is, most people don't talk to me like that.
And why haven't you collected them before?
I didn't have choppers and soldiers before. I didn't have the resources.
Oh, you should have come to me earlier.
Maybe. But honestly, I couldn't make up my mind.
About?
Whether you were worthy, or had your head deeply up your own ass.
Most people don't talk to me like that.
Most people don't have the power to hand you a continent.
Lighten up.
So, Jeremy, are you leaning towards one quote over any
There's
of
a
the others?
lot of good quotes there.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to move towards the serious, the funny. It honestly might have to throw a coin because there's some good ones there.
Throw a coin or toss a coin?
I will throw
Flip a
it
coin?
against the wall.
All right. Whatever your method is for choosing a vote or choosing a quote, you can go get your vote on over at, as I said, goldenspiralmedia.com/revolution. Click on the polls tab and get your vote on for your favorite quote from Ghosts. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Revolution podcast. We want to invite you to join us later in the week as we release the feedback podcast. If you're in the live show, which we record every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time over at goldenspiralmedia.com/live, we're going to be recording that right now as soon as we wrap up this podcast. So stick around and join us as we record that. We will release it later in the week for those of you who aren't with us live. We also want to invite you to send in your feedback that we include in the feedback podcast. You can call us on the Golden Spiral Media voice feedback line at 304-837-2278. It goes straight to voicemail. You don't have to talk to Jeremy or I. You don't have to worry about calling at 2 in the morning and waking our kids up or anything like that. And you can also go over to our website, goldenspiralmedia.com, click on the Send Voicemail tab that's hanging out on the right-hand side of the page, and that'll open up a little dialog box that will allow you to use your computer's microphone and send us a feedback that way. That has a limit of 90 seconds. And, of course, you can also email us a MP3 or an audio file or typey out an email over at feedback@goldenspiralmedia.com. And the deadline to send in feedback is 6 o'clock Eastern on Tuesdays.
All right. And you can Twitter us at GSM Podcast. Did you already do this?
No, you can Twitter us.
I don't,
This is
you can
obviously the
tweet us.
lingo of someone who doesn't spend much time on
I'm
Twitter.
learning. All right. Anywho, you can tweet us, or should I say tweeter? You can tweeter us.
Whatever you want, man.
All right. You can. Well, I'm gonna go with tweeter.
Okay.
You can tweeter us at GSM Podcasts, and that will be included in our feedback podcast, which is coming up next. And I think we released that on
Thursday night.
Thursday night.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook us at facebook.com/Golden Spiral Media. And please rate us and review us on iTunes or any other method you choose to download our podcast.
Yeah, we've had several reviews come in, a couple recently, and of course during the break we didn't get a whole lot, and that's definitely expected. But we appreciate all the reviews. We just ask for an honest review. If you hate us and you know, if you do hate us and give us a 1-star, that's okay. But give a reason why, because there might be something we can do to improve the podcast. We definitely appreciate an honest review. Yep. And the last thing I'll mention is this is a listener-supported podcast. If you want to help us out with covering some of the costs of our show, we would certainly appreciate that. You can go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/support. You'll find all of our affiliate links to Amazon, Netflix that we mentioned at the top of the show. And the reason I threw Netflix in there is because as of yesterday, April 1st, no fooling, Fringe is available in Netflix. The first 4 seasons are there. I'm sure 5 will be there eventually. But that is exciting news for all you Fringe fans out there. Or maybe you've been waiting to get into Fringe. Now's a great time to do that with Fringe being available on Netflix. If you don't have a Netflix account, that and all of our other affiliate links are over at goldenspiralmedia.com/support. There's also a place there where you can send us a donation. If you're interested in advertising for us or with any of our podcasts, you can go over to goldenspiralmedia.com/advertise. We can talk about that. We'd love to have you on board. Jeremy, it's good having you on board today.
All right. I'm glad you're glad I'm on board.
Yeah. I didn't put in a sign-off for this.
I noticed that.
Yeah.
I thought you were going with the same one.
Is that what you have? Is that for this week?
Yeah, I'm going to end with some simple math.
All right. Gosh, what am I going to do? I'll play off my episode rating. All right, you ready? All right, guys. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Revolution Podcast. And until next time, may all your baths be acid baths.
12 minus 2 equals 10.
The Revolution Podcast and Golden Spiral Media are not associated with Bad Robot Productions, Kripke Enterprises, Warner Brothers, or NBC. Golden Spiral Media's use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided within United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use. For advertising opportunities, live show, and other Golden Spiral Media podcast productions, visit goldenspiralmedia.com. Copyright 2012, Golden Spiral Media.